Three of the biggest fast food chains in America, McDonald's, Subway, and Wendy's, have been quietly restructuring what you actually get for your money for over a decade, and almost nobody is talking about it. Today, I have the court dockets, the corporate letters, and the actual numbers. And once you see how this was engineered, you won't order the same way again. Here's how I want to do this. I'm not going to just list a bunch of numbers. I want to walk you through this like an actual investigation, because that's what it is. Federal court filings, corporate press releases, consumer surveys, kitchen operational documents. It's all there, publicly, if you know where to look. And when you line it all up, a very specific pattern starts to emerge. Not one company doing one thing, a whole industry moving in a coordinated direction. Over roughly a 15-year window, here's where it starts. A Purdue University survey published in November 2024 with a nationally representative sample of 1,200 shoppers found that more than 75% of Americans have actively noticed food packaging and portion sizes getting smaller. 3 out of 4 people. But here's the twist. Only 15% of those same shoppers said they regularly check the actual weight or volume on the packaging, and only 16% consistently verify the unit price before they buy. Read that again. We know it's happening. We can feel it. But almost nobody is actually measuring it. That's the gap this whole industry has been operating in. And in fast food specifically, where you can't weigh a sandwich before you buy it, where you're eating it in your car 10 minutes later, that gap is even wider. Let me show you where this trail leads. The first data point in this investigation is from December 2008, McDonald's dollar menu. For years, one of the anchor items was the double cheeseburger, 2 1.6-ounce beef patties, 2 slices of processed American cheese on a bun for $1. That was the deal. That was the value proposition that pulled millions of people through the drive-thru. And then in December 2008, that item quietly disappeared. In its place, the McDouble, same 2 patties, same bun, same $1 price point. But instead of 2 slices of American cheese, it now had 1. That's a 50% reduction in cheese on the entry-level double burger. And this wasn't a temporary promo. This became the new standard. McDonald's restructured its value tier to protect margins against rising dairy costs, while holding that dollar price point. Think about how that works in practice. If you were a regular customer who ordered a double cheeseburger 3 times a week, you weren't told anything changed. The bun looked the same. The wrapper looked the same. The receipt showed the same price. But the sandwich itself was measurably different from the one you'd been ordering for years. A quiet swap. And by the time enough people noticed to talk about it publicly, the old version was long gone. Now, and this is where I want to be fair, that's a real cost pressure. Dairy prices genuinely moved. And in 2024, McDonald's disclosed that across the entire domestic system, the average menu item increased by roughly 40% between 2019 and mid-2024. That's the number McDonald's USA president, Joe Erlinger himself, put in an open letter to customers on May 29, 2024. The Big Mac specifically went from $4.39 in 2019 to $5.29 by May 2024, a 20.5% increase. Not the prices doubled narrative circulating online, but the range across menu categories went from 20% up to 44%. That's real. The problem isn't that prices went up, prices go up. The problem is what happened alongside it. The quiet subtraction, the cheese slice, the packaging redesigns, the portion tweaks that never got announced. Because once you start pulling that thread, it doesn't stop. If you're still with me, this next part is where the investigation takes a turn. Because we're going from operational changes to actual federal court dockets. And what a judge ruled might change how you look at every burger commercial you've ever seen. Let's talk about how a burger looks in an ad versus what shows up in the wrapper. Justin Chimienti versus Wendy's International LLC. Case number 122 CV 02880, filed in the Eastern District of New York. This was a class action lawsuit alleging that Wendy's and McDonald's burger patties in their marketing photography looked substantially bigger than the burgers customers actually received. Court documents laid out exactly how this happens. In commercial photo shoots, beef patties are commonly seared lightly on the outside with a blowtorch or grill iron, just enough to brown the surface, while the interior of the patty stays completely raw and cold. Why? Because when meat cooks fully, the fat renders and water evaporates. The patty shrinks. Court filings put that shrinkage between 20% and 25% in diameter, thickness, and volume. So the burger you see in the commercial? It's basically a raw meat sculpture. If a store actually served that patty, you'd send it back. And on top of that, food stylists have been documented using hidden cardboard shims, silicone spacers, and toothpick supports underneath patties and between tomato slices to prevent the bun from sagging and to maintain the visual height. That commercial burger you're looking at is engineered like a movie prop. Now, here's where I got genuinely surprised. On September 30th, 2023, a federal judge, Judge Hector Gonzalez, same Eastern District of New York, dismissed that class action, ruled it out. His reasoning: The oversized commercial imagery constitutes what the law calls puffery, standard promotional food styling, legally permissible. So to summarize, showing a 25% larger burger in a photograph than what physically exists on the grill is protected by law. Wendy's legal team maintained throughout the case that marketing photography is standard commercial styling and doesn't contradict the published pre-cooked meat weights on the menu, and the court agreed. Sit with that for a second. It's not that the photograph is slightly enhanced, it's that the meat in the photograph is literally raw, physically incapable of appearing on a customer's tray in that condition. And a federal court has ruled that's a normal protected part of how food is sold in this country. That's not a loophole someone found. That's the rule. That's the standard. That's the ground rules of the game you're playing every time you look at a menu board. Now here's where the investigation crosses over into pricing strategy. And this one is about Wendy's specifically. For years, one of the best value plays in fast food was the 4 for $4. The junior bacon cheeseburger or double stack, a 4-piece nugget, a small fries, and a small drink for $4. That was the deal. That was the entry point. Between 2019 and 2024, that structure got restructured. It became a tiered biggie bag system, a $5, $6, and $7 version. The base 4 for $4 name still exists in some markets, but it's been restricted to select entry items or repriced. In some regions, the equivalent bundle now costs $4.44, up to $6.25. Depending on your market, that's a cost adjustment between 25% and 56.25% for what used to be a straight $4 meal. Same 4 items, same brand. Different math. And then in February 2024, Wendy's got into a completely separate mess. During an earnings call, executives mentioned plans to install digital menu boards in 2025 that would give them, quote, more flexibility to change the display of featured items. The internet decided that meant surge pricing, dynamic pricing based on demand, like Uber, but for a Frosty. And the backlash was immediate. Wendy's had to publicly clarify on February 27th and 28th. Their statement said the digital boards were misconstrued. They had no plans to raise prices when demand was highest. The intended use was to offer discounts and value promotions at slower times of day, and to change menu offerings at different parts of the day. Off-peak deals, not peak hour surge pricing. That's their position. And to be balanced, that's a genuine clarification, and dynamic pricing for discounts is legitimately different from dynamic pricing for surge. But the fact that people immediately jumped to, they're going to Uber price my Baconator, tells you where trust in this industry is sitting right now. Okay, and now we get to this segment that this entire investigation was building toward. Because up to this point, we've been talking about pricing, packaging, and cheese slices. What comes next involves an active federal lawsuit, one that hasn't been resolved yet, and a percentage that genuinely made me pause when I saw it. Anna Tollison versus Subway Restaurants Incorporated. Case number 124CV 07495, filed in the Eastern District of New York on October 28, 2024. This is currently an active lawsuit. I need to say that clearly. These are formal allegations in a civil complaint, not established legal fact. The court hasn't ruled. Subway's defense position is that franchise operations follow standardized recipe builds with precise target ingredient weights. With that context, here's what the complaint alleges. The lawsuit contends that Subway's promotional advertisements for the steak and cheese sub depict a sandwich containing at least 200% more meat than what customers actually receive in store. 200%. That's not 1.5 times more meat in the ad. It's 3 times more. The complaint compares the imagery on the Subway mobile ordering app, where the sandwich looks like meat is overflowing from the bread, against physical sandwiches purchased from retail locations, which court filings describe as containing approximately 2.5 ounces of meat. And this is where the food styling techniques come back in. Court documents describe how commercial sandwich photography uses front-loading. Food stylists position all the meat and vegetables along the forward-facing hinge of the bread directly at the camera, while the back of the roll stays largely empty. Then they prop the sandwich from behind on angled wedges so the ingredients tilt upward toward the studio lighting. The result on camera? A sub that looks like it's bursting with fillings. The reality? When you unwrap it, a flatter, more uniform build. There's more. The complaint notes that in 2023 and 2024, Subway rolled out store retrofits that included metal display covers partially obscuring the customer's view of the sandwich prep counter during portioning, so you can no longer see, in real time, how much meat is going onto your sandwich. Now, this isn't Subway's first portion-related lawsuit. Back in 2013, there was the famous footlong case. Consumers alleged that Subway's footlong sandwich was actually measuring only 11 to 11.5 inches long, a 4 to 8% shortfall. Subway's defense was that dough handling and uncalibrated baking mats produced natural variation, and the promoted 12 inches referred to the standard target length. That case actually settled. Then in August 2017, The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, Judge Diane Sykes presiding, overturned that settlement, threw it out, so Subway effectively won that one on appeal. The new lawsuit is a completely different case, and it's about a completely different scale. Inches of bread versus a claim of 200% more meat in ads than in the sandwich. The comparison itself tells you how far this has escalated in 10 years. And look, I feel a little unfair even joking about this because the plaintiffs in these cases are serious. But you have to admit, there's something almost impressive about the food styling operation. Somewhere out there is a professional food stylist whose actual job is inserting toothpicks between tomato slices to keep them structurally aligned for camera. That's a career. That exists. That person has business cards. Okay, back to the investigation. There's one more piece of the puzzle I want to walk through, because it's a great example of how corporate messaging and consumer perception can diverge even when the intent is legitimate. September 4th, 2024. McDonald's rolled out a redesign of the McFlurry container in the United States. The old design, a paper cup with an open top, sealed by a rigid clear plastic dome lid. That dome gave the soft serve and toppings visible headspace to rise above the paper rim. And attached to the dessert machine spindle was the iconic hollow square shaft mixing spoon that McDonald's had used for years. The new design replaced the plastic dome with an integrated 4-flap paper closure. Cardboard flaps that fold flat across the top of the cup, creating a rigid sealing that keeps everything inside the paper perimeter. And back in October 2023, the hollow spindle spoon was already retired in favor of a smaller, flat black plastic spoon. At the same time, McDonald's launched a mini McFlurry, a roughly 50% smaller portion tier. Here's where you have to give McDonald's fair credit. Michael Gonda, McDonald's Senior Vice President and Chief Impact Officer for North America, publicly framed the packaging change around the corporation's stated environmental commitment, moving toward 100% renewable, recycled or certified materials in primary guest packaging by the end of 2025. That's a real corporate sustainability goal, publicly disclosed. But if you're a customer who cares about how much dessert is actually in the cup, the elimination of the dome head space does remove a chunk of the visible portion that used to sit above the paper rim. And the introduction of a smaller mini size formally establishes a reduced tier. Both things can be true: legitimate environmental initiative and effective portion reduction. That's honestly how most of this stuff works. It's rarely a single motive, but when the smaller portion happens to line up with the sustainability push in the pricing structure, you're allowed to notice. Now, I want to do something a little different, because doing this investigation properly means also calling out the shrinkflation claims that aren't real. You've probably seen the viral posts. The McDonald's filet of fish. People pull out their sandwich, unwrap it, and there's what looks like a half slice of cheese on the fish patty. And the comments explode, "Look what they're doing now. Shrinkflation. They took half my cheese." Here's what the actual documentation says. Historical company records, ingredient sheets, and internal kitchen operational manuals show that the half slice of cheese on the Filet-O-Fish has been the standard build since the sandwich's early development, going back to the 1990s. The reasoning was that a full slice would overpower the flavor of the steamed fish patty, so the half slice was engineered on purpose, and it's been that way for decades. So, that one isn't a recent reduction. It's a persistent operational standard. And I mention this specifically because a good investigation calls balls and strikes both ways. If everything is presented as a corporate scheme, then the real ones lose their weight. The double cheeseburger cheese slice reduction in 2008, that was real. The Subway lawsuit allegations, active federal filing, verifiable in court records, the Wendy's bundle restructuring, documented and disclosed, the Filet-O-Fish cheese slice, that's the internet inventing a shrinkflation that wasn't there. So here's where all of this lands. A Lending Tree economic survey from May 2024 documented something that I think is the real headline of this entire investigation. 78% of Americans now view fast food purchases as a luxury, not a value option, not a budget dinner, a luxury. 2/3 of surveyed consumers, 67%, reported actively cutting how often they eat out because of menu prices. And Walmart specifically noted that grocery transaction volumes went up among lower-income demographics as people substituted away from quick-service restaurants toward cooking at home. That's the shift. Fast food, which was designed and marketed for decades as the affordable, accessible dinner solution, has crossed a psychological line for the majority of Americans. And once you've walked through the trail, the 2008 cheese slice, the commercial puffery ruling, the value bundle restructuring, the active Subway litigation, the McFlurry packaging redesign, you can see how we got here. It wasn't one big moment. It was a decade of small, quiet adjustments, each one defensible in isolation, each one adding up. Here's what you can actually do. 2 things. First, before you order, check the app. Not the marketing images, the actual menu with the actual prices. Compare the sandwich sizes and portion counts to what you remember, and look at the unit math. Second, know the puffery rule when you see a burger commercial with a patty overflowing off the bun. Remember, that patty is legally allowed to be significantly bigger on camera than what shows up on your tray. It's not you misremembering the size. It's how the images are made. I'm tracking every one of these: court filings, corporate letters, packaging updates. If you noticed a specific fast food change I didn't cover, the last time you ordered something and thought, wait, this used to be bigger, drop it in the comments. Some of the best leads for these videos come from what you catch first. And next video, I'm going into the drink aisle. Sodas, energy drinks, bottled water. What's happening with beverage sizes and prices is honestly its own investigation. And there's one specific brand that used a packaging trick I've never seen anywhere else. That one's going to be interesting. See you then.